allow me to introduce our speakers, Bree and Fry of Pontifacts.
Hello, everyone. Fry, do you want to start us
Hi.
off with the intro?
Oh, yes. Hi. Well, I'm Fry, and welcome. This is Pontifacts. We're doing a talk.
We're doing a talk. Hello, we are Pontifacts. We are a papal history podcast ranking all of the popes from Peter to Francis. And for this intelligent speech, with its theming of contingencies, we are going to talk about the history of the Popemobile and all of the innovations made in response to the changes and challenges of the papacy. And I want to say before we get started, this was Fry's idea. Usually I come up with the ideas. This one was all her. So,
You know what? Sometimes I come up with ideas.
yeah,
Very
exactly.
rarely.
So, well, Pontifacts was her idea, the name. So, many credits. So, Fry, when you think of Popemobiles, you think of cars, right?
Well, the movie
Well,
or
that
actual
too. There
cars.
is a Popemobile in the Cars movie, which, yeah, we're gonna watch that movie on
Yeah,
Pontifex.
we have to rate the Popemobile.
We do have to rate the Popemobile, but you think about cars. However,
Yes.
we cannot start talking about the Popemobile without looking at the OG of Pope transport, or the Popemobile before the Popemobile, if you will. And this is the Sedia Gestatora. There it is.
Look at that
Beautiful.
thing.
Yes.
It's just a chair.
It is, and the name Sedia Gestatoria literally means chair for carrying. So it's relatively self-explanatory as a throne that was carried on the shoulders of 12 men for ceremony and procession, so the Pope could be visible to large crowds. The Sedia Gestatoria was often flanked by two ostentatious ostrich fans called flabella, which you can see here.
Yeah, I
And
see them.
fancy. And they were
That
richly adorned. Go ahead.
that looks like way more than 12 people if I'm trying to count them.
Well, yes, they're all around. This is a much later Sedia Gestatoria, of course.
A
The
bigger, more ornate one.
Exactly. So they're decorated with silks and gold and jewels. They are peak majesty. There is a reason that it was brought back in the young Pope for Pius's nonsense, because,
Oh God.
yeah, nonsense. So the origin of the sedia is somewhat debated, but it's likely thought to have been inspired by similar Roman or Byzantine sedans and litters that carried the emperors. For the popes, the sedia gestatoria was in use from antiquity all the way until 1978.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they used this for a long time. Pope John Paul I was the last pope to use the sedia gestatoria, and even he hadn't intended to. He didn't like this. He really didn't like the idea of being carried upon the shoulders of men, but he was convinced to use it to greet crowds in St. Peter's during his very short pontificate. In fact, some of the men who carried John Paul I on the sedia soon after carried him again on his funeral bier. But the suspiciously short papacy of Pope John Paul I is a story for another time. You're going to have to come to Pontifacts for that one.
Yes.
Now, although the sedia gestatoria lasted all the way till 1978, it was not the only means of ceremonial papal transport. And by the 1800s, it had relatively fallen out of regular use in favor of a much more normal convention. The
He's
horse.
got a fancy Cinderella chariot here.
Fancy Cinderella chariot for sure. But, the horse and chariot, it doesn't seem that exciting, right? It's not anything unusual. But as mundane as this seems, no matter how fancy it is, a horse and carriage appearing in the Vatican in the year 1800 was actually very unusual. You see, before the 1800s, a newly elected pope would have ridden on horseback for their consecration and entry into St. Peter's. However, in 1800, Pope Pius VII had a statement to make. You see, the last pope, Pope Pius VI, had been kidnapped by Napoleon and had died in imprisonment in France. Also a story for another time.
I guess we'll get there too.
Yeah. Yes, very dramatic. And so after he died, Pope Pius VII had then been elected, but he didn't have the opportunity to start his papacy in Rome. Instead, he'd been consecrated in this very strange sort of like half-assed ceremony that happened in France with a paper mache papal tiara because France had confiscated all of the papal jewels during the captivity of the last pope. They didn't even give him his fancy crown.
Well, they crafted a new one.
Out of paper mache. I don't think it was made with love. Napoleon did not love the Pope. So when Pius
spent the time crafting it,
someone did lazily. I mean, can you imagine if it was still wet and they're like sticking it on there? Like, this is the best you're gonna get. So when Pius VII actually gets to Rome after a rather harrowing sea voyage, riding into St. Peter's in this beautiful carriage may have been an attempt to be seen as retaking control in Rome, or like a reestablishment of authority and the majesty of the church that had just been stripped away. I am no paper mache pope. Look at my fancy Cinderella carriage.
How gold is it?
It's so gold. It's so gold. There's actually a real picture of this later one from 1826 I can show you later, but it's okay. Very fancy.
It's very gold.
Very gold. Now, unfortunately, this wasn't gonna go well for Pius. And as cautious as he was with Napoleon, he too would later be taken prisoner and exiled from Rome. And what was he driven away in? What else but a carriage?
This carriage? Or did he get a paper mache carriage?
He did not get a paper mache carriage. It would not have made it to France. Carriages, though, would continue to be used in the Vatican until the pontificate of Benedict XV in 1922. But now we can talk about automobiles. Sort of. You know, I think it's safe to say that the popes are not early adopters of new technology, and the introduction of cars was no exception. In fact, the first car that was actually gifted to the papacy in 1909 by the Bishop of New York was firmly rejected by Pope Pius X, who had no interest in exploring this new form of movement. And when asked about it, he said, "I prefer to walk."
That's fair. There's no seatbelts and stuff in those.
And this is also a pretty reasonable response because at the time, the popes didn't leave the Vatican, and they hadn't done so since 1870.
Okay. There's nowhere to drive to.
Yeah, but there's a reason they haven't left. You see, in 1870, during the unification of Italy, the Italian army had captured Rome from the pontiffs, ended the papal states, and effectively kept the popes prisoner in the Vatican. Not officially prisoner, but the popes refused to leave on principle because they refused to recognize this new Italy. They've just the papal states have been stripped from them. They're like, fine, I'm not coming out of my room, is basically what's going on. And it's very messy, and it's another strange story that we'll get to tell on Pontifacts.
At least the Vatican is large enough for them to wander somewhere.
Well, not at this time. This is before the establishment of Vatican City. They've literally just got St. Peter's Square, and that's about it.
Just the square. All right.
Yeah. We don't get Vatican City until Mussolini. So, yeah. So it wouldn't be until December 1929 that a car would first be used by the Pope, when Pope Pius XI finally boarded a Graham Page model automobile to leave the Vatican and visit the Lateran for the first time since the capture of Rome in 1870. This was an important and symbolic journey, although according to several news sources, nobody was told about it. Like the public was not told, so it was like secret journey. And
just the Pope getting in a car.
yeah, he decided he was going to celebrate in secret the New Lateran Treaty. Now, the Lateran Treaty is what is signed by the Pope and Mussolini, which reconciled the injury of the lost papal states by recognizing Vatican City as a sovereign state headed by the Pope. This journey also celebrated Pius's 50th anniversary of priesthood. So the Pope went in this car, he celebrated Mass in the Lateran, and he set a whole new precedent for papal travel. And now that popes were leaving the small area of the Vatican, the use of automobiles is going to become more useful and more welcome. And Pope Pius XI came to use many cars, including a 1930 Nuremberg, which is considered like the first official Popemobile there, although the term Popemobile is absolutely not official. A Bianchi, there was also a Bianchi Tipo, and the hilariously named Lictoria Sex.
That is terrible. What a terrible name.
For a Popemobile. How holy is this?
Not holy enough.
Not holy at all. I mean, very pornocracy, but not very 1929. So now that cars are acceptable and start to be regularly used by the popes, the practical use of a papal car becomes evident. In particular, popes begin to use cars as a way to address the faithful in St. Peter's Square and throughout Rome. And because they're being used as a way to maximize visibility of the pontiff to the crowds, this leads to many changes and innovations to the designs of the vehicles, including soft tops or sunroofs and guard railings to allow for standing or raised seating. This is also when Mercedes-Benz enters the chat and corners the Pope market in a very big way.
Fancy cars for the Pope.
Exactly. Throughout its history, Mercedes-Benz has made 1/3 of all Popemobiles, making it the largest consistent producer by far, starting in 1960 when Pope John XXIII was given the first Mercedes-Benz 300D with handles and controls that would allow him to stand and control things from his special seat.
Oh, he can just drive. I would look, the driver's there.
Yeah.
I would hate for someone else to be backseat driving for real.
Well, no, he gets like the air conditioning or like lifting his seat. He's not driving.
Driving.
And then
comfort things.
Exactly. Comfort things is a good way of putting it. So then throughout the 1960s, the Popemobile absolutely kicks off because popes begin to travel internationally. In 1964, Pope Paul VI becomes the first pope to leave Europe and the first pope to fly in a plane. Pontifact.
Where's Jordan?
On a plane right now.
Oh, how funny.
Exactly. And this precipitated the preparations of Popemobiles around the world. In the same year, Pope Paul also made the first papal visit to the United States, where a Lincoln Continental served as the Popemobile in New York City. The Lincoln
grandpa car.
They really did. This Lincoln also included a clear soft top roof, an elevated throne so he could stand or be visible seated as he was driven through the city to Yankee Stadium, where he celebrated Mass, and was then later used for the parade for the astronauts. So it's not an exclusive Popemobile.
Oh, no. Okay. Other people get to go in this old man car.
They did. Now, as international travel increased and expanded to areas the papacy had never been before, the types of Popemobiles also expanded to include more robust, all-terrain vehicles to meet the demand of different cities, countries, environments, and level of development.
So he's got like a Jeep?
Jeeps, all-terrain vehicles, things that have a little bit more gusto to get over unpaved roads, that sort of thing. Now, unfortunately, after an attempted assassination in November of 1970 in Manila, Pope Paul VI heavily reduced his international travel. In the attempt,
that would do it.
That
Someone
would do
tries
it.
to kill you, you don't want to leave.
And like directly tries to kill you, because in this attempt, Pope Paul was attacked and wounded with a knife, and the assailant only narrowly missed his throat because Pope Paul happened to be wearing a really stiff collar to help with a different medical condition.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, so it was really close and really awful. And this assassination attempt is not often discussed, but I'm really looking forward to telling that story too. But when we think of assassination attempts that changed how popes travel, the Manila attack on Pope Paul VI is definitely not what comes to mind. And that is the big one. On May 13th of 1981, Pope John Paul II was traveling through St. Peter's Square in the Popemobile when he was critically wounded in an assassination attempt. And this moment would change everything for the Popemobile. The Popemobile, a 1973 Fiat Campagnola, was an open-air vehicle which provided a clear view and shot of the Pope, providing ample opportunity.
Don't say that.
Oh, but it's true. This allowed our would-be assassin, Mehmet Aliaga, to fire 4 shots at the Pope. Pope John Paul II was struck twice, and 2 bystanders were injured before the Popemobile could speed the collapsed Pope away to safety. Now,
I'm glad nobody was in front of the Popemobile, just getting run over by the Popemobile because someone shot the Pope.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, they still didn't move very fast, but we're going to see that change as a result of this. So, Aliaga was arrested immediately and sentenced to life imprisonment by the Italian courts. But famously, Pope John Paul II publicly forgave Aliaga and asked the public to pray for him. 2 years after the attack, the Pope visited Acca in prison and even advocated for his pardon to the Italian president. Now, Aliaga was pardoned and released from prison in 2000, but he was pretty much immediately extradited to Turkey and sent to prison for other crimes that he'd committed in the 70s.
Oh, I see. The Pope's like, I don't care about this crime. But Turkey was like, oh, but this other stuff he did.
Yeah, we care a lot about those ones. But of course, the assassination attempt really did change everything for the way popes would travel in public and the Popemobiles, as it was clear that they needed to be entirely redesigned with the safety and protection of the Pope at a much higher priority. However, by this point, the primary function of the Popemobile was to ensure that the popes could be seen in their travels and be close to the faithful, and especially for those who traveled great distances to lay eyes on the Holy Father. Pretty conflicting conundrum.
Yeah.
So car designers quickly clamored to create some sort of design that would maintain visibility but keep the Pope safe from attack. And who comes out first? Well, of course, it's Mercedes-Benz with the 230G. And this is where the most famous image of the Popemobile comes from. Armored vehicles with transparent bubbles or domes with bulletproof glazing for the Pope to safely interact with the large crowds. The new security-oriented Popemobiles were kitted out with armored plating, off-road capability, additional seating and standing room for security guards, enhanced acceleration for emergencies, top-of-the-line engines, and more. These modified cars may not look particularly impressive from the outside, but they can weigh as much as 3 tons due to all the additional security features.
Yeah, it's not a great bubble.
Yeah, it's not a great bubble. It's not very exciting, but it will keep them safe, and they're going to be kitted out to the best of their ability. Now, the enhanced security Popemobiles were the standard throughout the remainder of Pope John Paul II's papacy, which was another 24 years after the assassination attempt, and throughout the entire papacy of Pope Benedict XVI. And likely, this is exactly how Popemobiles would remain to this day and well into the future if it weren't for the election of one Jorge Bergoglio to the papacy as Pope Francis. Pope Francis has proved to be, in so many different ways, an entirely different kind of pope. As a Jesuit who takes his commitment to living simple seriously, he's done away with many papal conventions, including excessive vestments and expensive luxuries. He's even rejected the papal palace residence in favor of a small apartment in a Vatican guest house where visiting clergy reside while visiting the Holy See. And as far as transportation goes, before he was Pope, Pope Francis heavily preferred to use public transportation rather than personal vehicles. What's more, Pope Francis has been public about his disregard for additional safety measures.
Oh yeah, he likes to sneak out.
Yes, when he was made Pope, the Swiss Guard had to expand its membership because the current retinue couldn't keep up with Francis's attempts to sneak out of the Vatican at night, and it still happens. So when it comes to using the Popemobile, it's no surprise that Francis was going to want something simple and not overly confined. Although it's been used rarely, particularly at the start of his papacy, Francis has openly expressed distaste for the enclosed bubble Popemobiles, referring to them as sardine cans, and criticizing the distance that they put between him and the people he's meant to connect with. For that reason, the Popemobiles chosen by Francis have mostly returned to the open air design. And when asked about the potential safety concerns, Francis is quoting as saying, "Let's face it, at my age, I don't have much to lose.
I'm an old man."
I'm an old man. If I go, I go. It's fine." And because he's committed to humility, Francis has also rejected the use of luxury car brands like Mercedes-Benz for modest cars instead, like Jeeps, Toyotas, Kias, Hyundais, and Fords, or old Popemobiles used by previous popes when they're still available. This is Francis leading by example, since Francis has publicly addressed priests and bishops, urging them to use simple cars. And when not in the official Popemobile, Francis gets himself around the Vatican in a 1984 Renault, which is a tiny little car that has over 200,000 kilometers on it, and it's super cute. And if that was not all, Pope Francis has given car designers a new challenge. In his commitment to environmentally friendly initiatives, Francis has expressed a great interest in turning the papal fleet into all-electric vehicles. So we will soon see a new iteration of Popemobiles designed with efficiency and green energy in mind. And guess which company was first to jump on the challenge?
Well, it's going to be Mercedes.
It's Mercedes. It looks like they're trying to win their way back into the Popemobile game. So that brings us to the end of our talk, and I have a couple fun facts for you. First, all Popemobiles are issued with a special license plate with SCV, which is Status Civitatis Vaticanae, followed by a fleet number with SCV1 being the main Popemobile in use. Pope John Paul II hated the word Popemobile and asked the media to stop using it because it was undignified. He's entirely right, but it's never gonna go away.
It's never going to go away. Imagine if it was like the 2000s or 2010s. It would be like whatever.
Popey McPope face.
face.
Definitely. So the Popemobile has taken many forms of automobile over the years, including sedans, pickups, SUVs, sports cars, limousines, buses, even a jeepney, which is a popular form of public transit in the Philippines. And there was even a 1999 glass-sided bus that was used in Mexico City, which is currently still there as a mobile memorial for John Paul II. Many auto manufacturers have provided Popemobiles, including Mercedes-Benz, Lamborghini, Lincoln, Fiat, Ford, Leyland, Seat, FSC, Range Rover, GMC, Izzata, Victoria, Ford, GMC, Peugeot, Citroën, Land Rover, Kia, Jeep, Hyundai, and Isuzu. And they have all built different iterations of Popemobiles in the past. Even Ferrari. Pope Benedict XVI never got a driver's license, but he did have a helicopter's license and did occasionally fly a papal helicopter.
What a weird, like I can't drive a car, but I can absolutely drive in Ford engines. All three dimensions.
Absolutely. It's so bizarre. But then again, he did serve with military service.
That's true.
And finally, the Popemobile used for Pope John Paul II's 1979 trip to Ireland is now a party bus, which was initially used for city tours, but it has gained fame and notoriety for being rented out for hen and stag parties, where it costs $385 per hour. Unfortunately, it seems like this was recently just retired because
Dang.
I was definitely going to look
We had
into
to go
this.
rent it.
So yeah, I have a picture to wrap us up of the party bus Popemobile. There it is. They've painted it yellow. I don't know why. That's the thing they've done. And I have a picture of Pope Francis's little personal car, which is adorable. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. So we have 10 minutes for questions. Come listen to Pontifacts if you want the rest of those stories. Sarah, do you want to jump on and do questions, or do you want me to do them?
Yes, I was just getting on.
Perfect.
So our first question comes from, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Noga F. And it says, congratulations, you were awarded with a tour around Rome in one of the Popemobiles of your choice, whichever you like, from the chair onward. Which one are you going to choose?
I mean, the question would be Pope Francis be in it with me, or am I taking it by myself? Because I think, having been in Rome, I would definitely like one of the ones that have a little bit of extra security to them, because people drive very fast there. But I like the idea of it being electric because that's cool. What about you, Fry?
Yeah, one of those later ones where it has more seating, but also less bubble.
Yeah, I'm not here for the bubble. Anyone else?
Do we know of any assassination and or kidnapping attempts made on the Pope while he was in the chair?
Well, considering that the chair was primarily used in antiquity, this was a period in time where the popes were still not quite legalized. So it's entirely possible that some of the popes were apprehended while being carried in procession, but we don't have anything specifically written about that. That seems like maybe it could have been a Martin thing, but we don't have any specific one.
Follow up to that question before I go to a different one. Was the Pope ever dropped in his chair?
It had to have happened. Nothing specifically recorded, but I think that was part of the scene in The Young Pope when Pope Pius is using it. He's trying to be all majestic and there's a little stumble. So
you know what? I couldn't even watch that scene because that's the one with whatever sexy and I know it over it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's really obnoxious.
It's so cringy.
And do you know how Joseph Ratzinger came to fly helicopters? I didn't learn it during his military service in World War II.
So it was probably part of his compulsory training at the beginning, because we know he was part of the Hitler Youth at the time, and that was sort of the standard in being brought into training for his military service. He actually defected from his military service. So we're not exactly sure what training he had or didn't have, because he made himself essentially a criminal in that process. But he also had all the time in the Vatican to learn. And he was very much an indulgent and excessive pope. So I could totally see him being like, hey, I miss flying a helicopter. Let's do that.
Were there ever any Popemobile car crashes?
Yes, but mostly with people. It's definitely hit people, mainly because people get really excited when the Pope is right there. And there was an incident in the United States that I was going to put in here where a bunch of people rushed the Popemobile and sort of got bumped by it, and it was this whole big drama. But primarily hitting people rather than other cars.
If you could choose any mode of transport for the next Popemobile, what would it be?
Electric bikes. For sure. I just saw somebody going through an airport on a bike and I was like, that just makes so much sense. And the way that Rome's laid out, it would be perfect. What about you, Fry?
I was gonna say like a golf cart. That made sense to me.
Yeah.
Electric bikes are still too spooky for me.
I love my electric bike. It's great. All right, we have like 8 more minutes. Any more questions? I'll take the opportunity to take a sip of tea after talking that much.
I've got one in the Q&A tab, which is, when do you think you'll make it to the stories of the 20th century popes?
Whoa, goodness. So it's going to take a long time. This year, we're getting to halfway. So if that helps put our current schedule into perspective, maybe like 4 years. We do have we have a lot of period where there's a lot of overlapping popes. So it's going to be a while in there, but we're well into the 10th century now in terms of writing. So we're moving along. It's also the period I'm least excited to do because modern history doesn't jump out at me as much. So it may take longer just because of the way that the research will be different.
What are you looking forward to most in the podcast in the future?
The Renaissance, baby, it's coming. And I'm so excited to talk about Medici popes and the Patsy conspiracy and, the starts with Luther, Savonarola. Oh, so excited. That might also make the podcast take longer because I'm going to probably be a lot harder to rein in terms of bonus episodes.
As whatever.
Fry's in for the long haul.
Should the newer Popemobiles return to the cover everything in gold fashion, in your opinion?
No, I am a big fan of Francis's modesty and humility. I would like to see the church give away more of its wealth and not be aggrandizing itself more in the current world we're living in. I feel like that would be a death knell for the church. They're not going to survive if they keep being like, look at all our wealth while everyone else is struggling.
I mean, the all white looks nice.
Yeah.
Like it's not dirty. That's enough to be like, oh, they're wealthy.
It definitely says walk the walk as well as talk the talk. When you're and it has that purity is divinity more than grandeur, I guess.
And James Bolton says, I can't wait for your take on Catherine of Siena.
Drama. We do have a bonus episode up on Patreon where we talked about Catherine, but for Fry's benefit here, she plays a massive role with the popes, and
she keeps showing up. Okay.
Yeah, and she spends a lot of time yelling at them and calling them idiots. So she's like straight up drama, and I can't wait for that either because that's right at the start of the Renaissance.
Speaking of Catherines, can we fight about Caterina Sforza someday after Ben?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know if I would fight you on that. She's really interesting. Definitely not one of my favorite figures because she's not a Medici, but she definitely plays a large role against the Borgias. So we will definitely see a lot of conflict there. I'm ready for it. All right. 4 more minutes. We're almost there.
How about a white Popemobile with glitter then? It's less lavish, but still fun.
What do you think, Fry?
Well, isn't that this people are saying that's the whatever, the secret buyer of glitter is car paint. So does it not already have glitter in it?
Well, they were trying to indicate that it had something to do with like Ministry of Defense, but I mean, that would make more sense. I think the whole glitter scandal could be car paint for sure. I have strong opinions about this because I hate glitter. Glitter is an environment.
Where's the glitter going?
Well, it's not only that, but it's an environmental nightmare. It would
It
be
is.
so good for all of us if we just stopped producing glitter, especially on like nonsense things. I'm a Halloween person, and the amount of Halloween decorations that come out with an excessive amount of glitter just
Oh my God.
hurts.
And then the glitter falls off. It's not like the glitter
Yeah.
is on it. It just gets all over your house.
It's on everything all the time. Yes, Rob, as a teacher, glitter is awful. I cannot imagine being in a classroom with it. So I wouldn't want it on all my holy vestments or my Popemobile for sure. Hard agree on the glitter. Yeah. Living with a cosplayer would do that. Glitter everywhere. I mean, there's a reason that glitter bombs are so effective as a revenge method, right? I could see popes doing that. You know, there's a lot of cardinals and bishops that currently need a little bit of humbling. So it would be really funny to just send them glitter bombs. This may be a good place to wrap up if there aren't any final questions, because I know that there are wonderful sessions to attend in our next round. So if everybody wants to make their way over that, that's perfectly cool. Thank you for coming and joining us for this session. We had a lot of fun. We'll see you next year.
Yep. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
This was fun. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.